Okay, good morning. I'm just doing a sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. So, so good morning, everyone. The purpose of today's meeting is to give a perspective of different opportunities for finding funding to support STEM students. So, this is a collaboration between the University of Puerto Rico Rio Piedras campus with the Puerto Rico section of the American Cancer Society, as we have a formal collaboration to try to ignite interest in research that is of the public health, particularly as it relates to cancer. And the idea is to try to create opportunities that can enhance the experience of research by finding different opportunities, networking, and so forth. And so this is going to be a first session where we're going to focus on opportunities that are for students and also get a perspective of students for pursuing different types of funding. And so what I want to do first is to introduce our guest speakers. So we're going to have first Dr. Lilian Santos. So Dr. Lily Santos is the Executive Vice President and Operating Officer of the American Cancer Society in Puerto Rico, serving as the island's senior staff leader. Since joining the ACS in 1996, she has guided mission and income strategies, engaging in business leaders, donors, and volunteers to advance cancer prevention, patient support, and research efforts. Under her leadership, ACS opened Puerto Rico's first Hope Lodge, a championed the passage of a comprehensive smoke-free law that helped the island achieve one of the lowest smoking rates in the nation and launched its first Relay for Life event. Before ACS, Dr. Santos was Assistant Vice President of Marketing, the youngest Dean of Student Affairs, and a psychology professor at Ana Jimenez University. She previously practiced clinical and industrial psychology with Effective Management and Training Systems Incorporated and served as a clinical psychologist at the Caribbean Center for Advanced Studies Community Clinic. She obtained a bachelor's from St. Joseph University in Philadelphia, both master's and doctoral degrees in clinical psychology from Centro Caribeño de Estudios Postgraduados in San Juan. She has also served her community through roles with the American Red Cross, Academia Maria Reina, and the Muscular Dystrophy Association. So with that, I will turn over to Dr. Lilian Santos.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm trying to put the video. Here I am. Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. And on behalf of the American Cancer Society, I want to thank Dr. Arthur Tinoco for the invitation and this great collaboration. So I'm gonna switch to English and Spanish because I have some of the material. So I uh, apologize for changing if anybody, I hope everybody speaks Spanish also. So for the American Cancer Society, we've been here in Puerto Rico for 52 years and at the national as part of the global organization for 112. As part of our commitment in the fight against cancer, we have four major pillars of patient support, advocacy, development, which we look for resources, financial resources, and we develop volunteers to support the mission, and discovery, which is research. In the area of research, we are proud to say that we are the number one non-governmental organization that supports research nationwide, and we have been able to support more than 50 Nobel Prizes in the area of cancer, and we have invested more than $5,000 million in the area of research. Um, as part of our commitment, we have since 1913 in the States, some of those Nobel Prizes that we have supported, especially young researchers. We could speak about the test of Papa Nicolau, tamoxifen, Glivec, um, knowing the importance of tobacco use and and how it affects your health and cancer. So we have come a long way in the history of the research where some breakthroughs have been thanks to the funding of the American Cancer Society in regards to the cancer fight. Also, through our research, we have provided early detection standards and also have been crucial in developing new treatments such as chemotherapy, immunotherapy, hormone therapy, and other uh, new targeted treatment that we that has been discovered as of chemotherapy, oral chemotherapy. So I'm going to switch to Spanish now. En el área de que nosotros tenemos y quería pues especialmente, o sea, la Sociedad Americana contra el Cáncer destaca que la investigación científica es esencial para entender mejor el cáncer, desarrollar métodos de prevención más efectivos, crear diagnósticos más precisos y producir tratamientos que salven vidas. Y a través de los años, yo que llevo 30 años dirigiendo la organización, yo he podido ver un cambio desde un enfoque buscando tratamientos remediativos, pero hoy por hoy buscando más bien la parte preventiva, de entender conductas, de establecer factores externos que puedan incidir en un diagnóstico de cáncer. Y ha habido un reenfoque hasta cómo estamos invirtiendo el dinero que les voy a explicar ya mismo. Para ustedes, los estudiantes universitarios y los futuros investigadores y los investigadores actuales que están aquí con nosotros hoy, esto significa que cada hallazgo, por más pequeño que parezca, contribuye al avance colectivo contra una de las enfermedades más complejas de nuestro tiempo. Su trabajo tiene un impacto real y el invertir y hacer investigación mejora la calidad de vida de millones de personas y abre nuevas posibilidades para la medicina del futuro. Y más aún, trae esperanza, porque sabemos que todo eso también trae la posibilidad de pues, estudios clínicos, de clinical trials, que es parte de todo lo que se habla en el área de investigación y muchas de las cosas que ustedes hacen. En términos de nosotros como organización, pues sí, hemos otorgado ahora mismo como 4 grants aquí en Puerto Rico. Tenemos un fondo que es competitivo a nivel nacional. Tienen fondos para el área intramural, extramural y específicamente, como les dije en un principio, les interesa financiar todos esos grandes premios Nobel. Comenzaron con jóvenes investigadores que le dieron estos fondos eh, para apoyarlos en sus investigaciones. Como les dije, hemos venido evolucionando a través del tiempo y la Sociedad Americana del Cáncer, pues a nivel nacional, tiene este fondo donde ustedes compiten. En Puerto Rico se le ha otorgado a la Escuela de Medicina de Ponce, se le dio inicialmente a un investigador que estaba trabajando más sarcoma, después se le dio a otra persona que tenía un fellowship en el área de psicología behavioral. Ahora mismo estamos trabajando con el doctor Tinoco y también hemos tenido otros grandes en el área de cáncer de seno. Pero quiero darles información específicamente, después le vamos a dar a dónde pueden buscar los fondos, cómo pueden competir por estos fondos, pero son unos fondos a nivel nacional, el cual ustedes compiten para esos fondos y definitivamente hay un interés grandísimo de poder financiar cosas en el área de poblaciones hispanas y en el área de Puerto Rico, pues que no tenemos muchas investigaciones en esa área específicamente dirigido a nosotros. Y les voy a decir, hoy por hoy, en el 2025, cómo se están dividiendo los fondos que fueron otorgados en el pasado año en términos de otorgación, ¿verdad? Sabemos que el 24% de los fondos otorgados en el año pasado fueron para específicamente estudios que no fueran de un cáncer en específico. Les voy a explicar ahora de qué se trata. El breast cancer es el segundo, que es el 16% de los fondos en el área de cáncer de seno. En el tercero es el 8% en el cáncer de pulmón. Fondos 7% fueron para en el área de cáncer colorectal. El 5% para brain tumor, para tumores cerebrales, 4% pancreático, igual para, 4% para leucemia, relacionados con cáncer en la sangre, cáncer de próstata un 4%, melanoma un 4% y 3% para el área de ovarios, hígado y hay como un 3% adicional para otros tipos de cáncer. Específicamente en el área de lo que nosotros hablamos, investigación no específica por cancer site, ¿verdad? Por un tipo de cáncer. Esto incluye investigaciones en el área de genética del cáncer, cómo se dividen o se mutan las células cancerosas, ¿verdad? Ustedes conocen sobre el tema. También se han financiado estudios, investigaciones en el área de sistemas de detección generales como la biopsia líquida, factores de riesgos comunes, ¿verdad? Como le dije, estamos estudiando más la cuestión behavioral, ¿verdad? Lo que es factores de riesgo en términos de estilos de vida, como la parte de obesidad, de parte de tabaquismo, y también fundamentos de terapias como quimioterapia, inmunoterapia. ¿Cuál es la importancia de esto? Entendemos que permite, aparte de lo tradicional que era dirigido a cáncer específico, están tratando de financiar quizás estudios que permiten entender principios universales del cáncer y que puedan desarrollar avances que beneficien no solamente un tipo de cáncer, sino muchos tipos de cáncer. Así que la investigación específica por sitio es cómo estudiar un cáncer particular y la investigación no específica por sitio es cómo estudiar las reglas generales de cómo funciona el cáncer. Como le dije, las mutaciones, la parte genética, la biología molecular y muchos otros aspectos que puedan ayudar a entender todos los tipos de cáncer. Así que en ese aspecto, pues ese es el compromiso que este año pasado hubo con relación a la inversión en investigación y creo que cuál es el resultado de todo esto. Pues la Sociedad Americana del Cáncer desde 1992 ha visto una reducción de un 32% en la mortalidad por cáncer. Eso es sumamente importante. Desde 1991, perdónenme, un 32% de, de, de reducción en mortalidad, por lo que sí han habido unos avances extraordinarios y nuestro compromiso como organización a nivel global es que queremos financiar la investigación porque sin investigación verdaderamente no va a haber avance y sin los avances no va a haber esperanza. Así que nosotros vamos a estar compartiendo con ustedes. Ustedes pueden ir a nuestro website www.cancer.org y pueden entrar a nuestra plataforma y ahí están todos los requerimientos para someter propuestas para funding. Y le expliqué lo que se financió el año pasado. Eso no quiere decir que si usted no estuvo mencionado en una de esas áreas que le especifique, no quiere decir que no pierdan la esperanza de que pueda ser considerado, ¿verdad? Para alguno de los grants, pero ¿verdad? Lo que quise era darle un perfil de qué fue lo que se financió en el pasado año y a qué le están dando más prioridad. Definitivamente, hoy por hoy sabemos que hay una situación a nivel nacional de como organización seguimos peleando la política pública. Estuvimos recientemente allá buscando que no reduzcan los fondos de investigación a NIH, ¿verdad? Al Instituto de Cáncer, porque sabemos que no, pues ahora mismo los fondos están en peligro. Por eso es que hoy por hoy el rol de la Sociedad Americana del Cáncer a nivel nacional ha tomado un rol más protagónico y más importante que nunca porque ustedes tienen que continuar sus investigaciones, no podemos interrumpirlo. Y hay muchas personas pues, que están en riesgo de perder quizás los funding para eso. Y la Sociedad Americana de Cáncer le va a dar también prioridad, aparte de todo lo que le estoy diciendo, a tratar de ayudar a continuar y a culminar muchos de estos estudios que quizás ya eran longitudinales y no queremos que se pierda esa data. Y tantos años de esfuerzo y esos laboratorios que llevan tiempo abiertos tratando de culminar sus estudios. Así que el compromiso de nosotros es con ustedes. Sabemos que hay mucho que hacer aquí en Puerto Rico. Agradecemos la invitación y no me quiero extender más porque dije que iba a hablar 3, 4 minutos, 5, ya yo creo que me extende un poco más, pero quiero que sepan que el compromiso de la Sociedad Americana de Cáncer con ustedes es extraordinario y si necesitan más información específica se pueden comunicar con nosotros. Como les dije, yo soy la doctora Lilian Santos y aquí en Puerto Rico, pues también tenemos nuestra página de website, es www.cancerpuertorico.org y en Estados Unidos ya le dije que era cancer.org. Así que estamos disponibles 24/7 para ustedes en esa página y también tenemos un centro de llamadas que es el NCIC de nosotros, que es, usted también puede llamar 24/7 para pedir información sobre, no solamente sobre la investigación y funding, sino también estudios clínicos disponibles porque queremos aumentar la participación de hispanos en el área de estudios clínicos y así poder tener un perfil más dirigido a nuestra población en Puerto Rico y en los hispanos de Estados Unidos.
Well, thank you so
Gracias.
much, Dr. Santos. Thank you for what the ACS has been doing for our community and obviously for the nation at large. So now we're going to move to our next guest speaker, Daniele Rivera Santiago, who has a Master of Science, as a public health professional specializing in epidemiology, infection prevention, and cancer research education. She is currently pursuing a doctorate of public health in health systems analysis and management at the University of Puerto Rico Medical Sciences campus. She holds a Master's of Science in Epidemiology, a certification in Infection Control, and a Bachelor of Science in Natural Sciences with a concentration in biomedicine. She worked as a lead study coordinator within the Division of Cancer Control and Population Sciences, supporting data analysis, manuscript development, IRB submissions, participant recruitment, and coordination of HPV-focused scientific meetings. She also served as the antibiotic stewardship coordinator for the Puerto Rico Health Department SHARP program, where she oversaw educational initiatives, supervised staff, managed budgets, coordinated trainings, and supported community-level infection prevention efforts. Danielle serves as the education and training coordinator for the Research Education Program on Microbes, Infections, and Cancer, also known as REPMIC, at the University of Puerto Rico Comprehensive Cancer Center. In this role, she leads program development, training coordination, mentor-mentee engagement, scientific event planning, and program evaluation. She also contributes to grant reporting and promotes program visibility through institutional and public channels. With that introduction, I'd like to turn it over to Danielle.
Thank you so much for that introduction and for having us here. Today, I'll be talking about our cancer research trainees education opportunities. I'll be speaking Spanish, but if anyone has a question, I could easily talk English. Así que buenos días, mi nombre es Tanely Rivera, como bien me han introducido. En el día de hoy, ¿la pantalla se ve bien?
Sí.
Sí, perfecto. Así que en el día de hoy les voy a estar hablando de unos programas que tenemos en el Centro Comprensivo del Cáncer. Nosotros, ¿verdad? Tenemos una oficina llamada The Office of Cancer Research Training and Education Coordination, pero, ¿verdad? También tenemos otros ofrecimientos dentro del programa del Centro Comprensivo del Cáncer que es de beneficio para todos los estudiantes. Así que, primero, ¿verdad? Quiero destacar o quiero, ¿verdad? Indicar que nuestro equipo está compuesto por los siguientes integrantes. Sobre todo, ¿verdad? Estamos dirigidos por la doctora Ana Patricia Ortiz, eh, tanto directora de la Oficina de Educación y Entrenamiento como de los próximos dos programas que les voy a estar orientando. En la oficina de CRTech o el Office of Cancer Research Training and Education Coordination, como mejor se conoce, se estableció en el 2023, en el 2023, con la misión de crear una infraestructura sólida para apoyar entonces el desarrollo de carreras científicas a todos dentro de los niveles, ya sea bachillerato, a nivel de maestría, doctorado, postdoc, etcétera. Incluso para facultad de nuestra institución. Nuestros objetivos principales es proveer entonces la educación interdisciplinaria, mentoría y oportunidades de adiestramiento para estudiantes, para el personal y la facultad. Apoyamos en el desarrollo de la próxima generación de investigadores y profesionales de la salud enfocados en el cáncer y entonces uno de nuestros objetivos es entonces fortalecer esa infraestructura necesaria para seguir expandiendo estos esfuerzos de investigación y de cuidado del cáncer en Puerto Rico y globalmente. Esto nos permite, ¿verdad?, que la formación científica desde pregrado hasta nivel postdoctoral, pues tenga esos beneficios de ayuda en investigación y entre otras. CRTech dentro de estos pasados 2, 3 años hemos tenido varios logros destacados. Entre ellos, hemos realizado aproximadamente 21 workshops y cursos en el cual, ¿verdad?, han establecido diferentes temas como lo que es Clinical and Translational Research, Cancer Medicine, y pues nosotros nos enfocamos mucho también en lo que es la investigación de ciencias poblacionales, salud pública, etcétera. También hemos podido apoyar a más de 200 estudiantes durante estos 3 años, 2, 3 años, en actividades educativas y de investigación. Y debemos verla destacar que han sido entre talleres de prevención y control de cáncer, experiencia de investigación específicamente para postdoc, el programa REDMI y CAPA, que luego les voy a estar hablando un poquito más a fondo, experiencias de investigación para enfermería, experiencias de investigación voluntaria, que verdad, también vamos a estar dialogando un poquito más sobre esto, donde verdad, hemos logrado exitosamente que 14 estudiantes hayan sido pareados con investigadores dentro del Centro Comprensivo del Cáncer, ajustados a lo que ellos necesitaban o ajustados a sus intereses. Además, ayudamos a apoyar a diferentes facultades y como postdoc a crear propuestas competitivas y someter manuscritos para publicación. Eh, Antes de pasar a RedMic, CIRTEC, ¿verdad? Es una oficina donde apoya a todo el mundo dentro de la institución. Sin embargo, nosotros también tenemos la oportunidad de recibir estudiantes de bachillerato, maestría, etcétera, a nivel voluntario. En el mismo está en nuestra página. Luego al final le voy a estar mostrando los enlaces. Así que si usted es un estudiante que actualmente le interesa la investigación, pero no sabe por dónde comenzar o a dónde aplicar, y le interesa lo que es esa conexión o esas asociaciones con cáncer, el Centro Comprensivo del Cáncer definitivamente es una oportunidad magnífica para usted. Nosotros tenemos el voluntariado que, ¿verdad? Se llena una solicitud y a base de lo que usted nos pone como sus intereses, vamos entonces pareándolo con algún mentor que tenga disponibilidad en el momento de recibirlo. ¿Verdad? Esto es un proceso que se tarda un poquito, así que si, por ejemplo, usted quiere realizar algún tipo de investigación o le interesaría participar de alguna investigación durante el verano, pues les recomendamos que ya de estos momentos empiecen a solicitar, porque pues tiende a ser un poquito competitivo y de larga duración el proceso. Ahora, quiero hablar un poquito de RedMic, luego voy a hablar de CAPAC, pero, ¿verdad? RedMic es uno de nuestros programas más completos y transformadores, ¿verdad? Es nuevo, estamos en nuestra segunda cohorte durante este año, así que RedMic consta de Research Education Programs on Microbes, Infections and Cancer, financiado por el National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease del NIH, y está dirigido por la doctora Ana Patricia Ortiz, por la doctora Maribelis Soto Salgado y yo, que tengo el privilegio de coordinarlo. Este programa fue creado para atender la necesidad bien importante, que es ofrecerle a los estudiantes graduados de bachillerato la oportunidad de continuar desarrollándose en investigación antes de aplicar un programa graduado o de una escuela profesional en ciencias de la salud, etcétera. ¿Por qué nosotros tenemos este programa? Porque actualmente en Puerto Rico solamente existen 3 postbacks y este es el único que está relacionado a cáncer. Así que este postback, como ven en el slide, ¿verdad? Queríamos hacerlo bastante resumido, pero en caso de ustedes querer más información, con gusto le podemos proveer. Aquí está el correo electrónico de nosotros y en nuestro teléfono. También puede escanear el QR code y ahí va a tener nuestro Linktree donde puedes encontrar todas nuestras páginas. Pero REDMIC es un programa de 37 semanas. En comparación con otros programas de investigación, normalmente son un poquito más cortos. Este es de 9 meses, es presencial, tiempo completo, y es enfocado en áreas de microbios, infecciones, inmunología y cáncer asociado a infecciones y microbios. ¿Verdad? HPV, VIH, cáncer por Helicobacter pylori o gástrico, etcétera, etcétera. Los participantes, ¿verdad?, que están con REDMIC pueden estar tanto haciendo investigación en el Centro Comprensivo del Cáncer, en Río Piedras o en ciencias moleculares. Así que, en el recinto de ciencias médicas, disculpen. Y esto va a incluir que, ¿verdad?, puedan tener esta experiencia de investigación completa, pero a su vez, REDMIC tiene otras oportunidades, incluyendo si tú quieres realizar en un próximo año, ¿verdad?, luego de este gap year, eh, medicina, farmacia, entre otros, nosotros le proveemos la oportunidad de tomar un curso graduado con el recinto de ciencias médicas para prepararlos para ese crecimiento profesional y académico que, ¿verdad?, necesitan para tomar sus next steps. Aparte de algunos incentivos económicos y, ¿verdad?, realizamos talleres durante todo el año para su crecimiento profesional. Estas son, ¿verdad?, también nuestros QR codes para que puedan seguirnos y quedarse actualizados con el programa REDMIC. Y voy a pasar para CAPAC, que CAPAC es un programa similar a REDMIC. Sin embargo, este va enfocado en cáncer en general, así que no solamente es específico a microbios e infecciones. Sin embargo, el mismo perdonen, el mismo es para personas a nivel graduado, ya sea maestría o que hayan entrado a medicina, farmacia, enfermería o otros programas que ya sea doctorado, maestría, etcétera. Ya esto va luego de haber entrado a este nivel. Debido a que, ¿verdad? Sabemos que estas personas están estudiando full time, este programa es de verano, empieza en la última semana de mayo y termina en la última semana de julio, pero aquí hay dos términos que es de 10 semanas y de 15 semanas. Así que dependiendo tus estudios, pues puedes realizar el programa de 10 semanas o el de 15. Este es bien importante que sepan que este es competitivo tanto para Puerto Rico como para Estados Unidos. En el caso de REDMIC es solamente para estudiantes de Puerto Rico. Tienen que haberse graduado de bachillerato en Puerto Rico. Pues, pueden entrar personas de Estados Unidos a nivel graduado también, y sus ofrecimientos son similares a lo que es el programa de REDMIC. Sin embargo, pues va un poquito más condensado y en comparación con REDMIC, que solamente escogen 10 estudiantes anualmente, escoge 25 estudiantes cada verano. CAPAC, ¿verdad?, realiza talleres y seminarios profesionales, provee entonces investigación directa bajo mentoría de cada uno de nuestros mentores, que en el caso de CAPAC tiene múltiples localizaciones, entre ellas está Ponce Health, está la UPR de Humacao, está Río Piedra, el recinto de ciencias médicas, está el comprensivo del cáncer, entre otras universidades que están asociadas al programa. Así que esto es una gran oportunidad también. Sé que, ¿verdad?, estoy haciendo un breve resumen. En caso de que tengan dudas o preguntas, quedo disponible y a su disposición. Así que estas son las redes sociales de CAPAC, pero para mí lo más importante ¿verdad?, que debemos decirle es que hay oportunidades en caso de que su interés sea en investigación en cáncer. Hay oportunidades de realizar investigación en cada etapa de tu desarrollo académico profesional. Así que no tengas miedo, busca información, solicita, que son oportunidades únicas, ¿verdad? Hace unos años, vamos a decir, antes del 2020, y aproximadamente estas oportunidades no estaban. Así que son un grupo, ¿verdad?, bastante afortunado de tener esta experiencia. Así que aprovéchenlas, dedíquense, ¿verdad?, a buscar qué es su interés, si es un tipo de cáncer específico, si es una infección y, ¿verdad?, no hay mejor procedimiento que el que no se hace. Así que le damos las gracias por estar con nosotros. Cualquier información adicional que requieran, estos son nuestros teléfonos, los correos electrónicos de cada uno de los programas, y en nuestra página del Centro Comprensivo del Cáncer podrá encontrar toda la información de los programas existentes. Así que muchas gracias por su atención y quedamos atentos a alguna pregunta o duda que puedan tener.
Thank you so much, Daniele. I just want to acknowledge that there are many resources throughout Puerto Rico, such as what Daniele is offering. So I think the students should be aware of what's out there and all the efforts that are being made towards providing these opportunities that are going to benefit our health. So thank you so
Yeah.
much once again. So before we move on to our stars, we're going to have me give an overview about a little bit of my insight with regards to the preparation of proposal, because the key thing here is that is just to get some insights, and in another time I can offer things that are more in depth, but just get some of the insights of how you can start to think about creating a proposal to try to achieve funds for different purposes that may will enhance your actual research experience. And so I crafted this to some extent so that it can be generally applicable to different types of proposals, but I am going to focus primarily on a research proposal, given the nature of why you are actually engaging in STEM work. All right, so let's dive into this. Let me just check a few things first. All right, so this is the overview. I'm going to talk a bit about just the idea of how can we define a proposal, and then a bit about the formatting the actual written proposal itself, which, depending on what you're trying to apply for, will actually vary. However, there are some key things that you have to keep in mind. Regardless of how long or actually short the proposal requirement is, there are certain things that you want to actually fulfill and to keep in mind of when it comes to seeking funds from a particular agency. And then another really important thing is the process of requesting letters of recommendation, because it's not just how effective you write or how effective you communicate your ideas. You also have to have your network, your team of people that can vouch for you, that you have the skills, that you have the drive, the dedication to be able to succeed in what you're trying to do. So let's first talk about defining the proposal itself. And so here I want to talk a little about this idea of the focus of the proposal, because it can be for many different things that you're trying to seek funds, and there are many opportunities available. I understand that there has been a change in our national administration, and with any change, regardless of your political views, with any change, there's always going to be a turnover in terms of what funding is available. There's going to be some lag phase, and that's true even in a non-changing administration. So keep that in mind. There's always going to be that. So you have to be the one that has to seek out these opportunities, and there are going to be those people who are your mentors and are available to help guide you towards this. And so this is what we're trying to do, is provide you at least some insights that we can give and help you to move towards finding where you can locate things that are going to build your career. So when it comes to finding funds, you can find funds to actually support your research, to actually support your living expenses. Okay, there are things like that. And so in the research category, it can be for materials, stipend, it can be towards your education if you're going to graduate school. You can even find funds that are for going to a conference or for creating a conference. Is actually really important. And so I actually have experience in those type of things. If anyone's interested, I can in a later date focus on that. There are funding opportunities for networking, and I will emphasize, I know that the pandemic made us kind of closed off a bit, turning to virtual resources to communicate, but it's very important to keep that in-person contact alive, because it is the people that you know that is going to really be able to help you push forward things. Because the way science moves, it moves by being able to embrace the expertise of different people and the different techniques or instrumentation that they have available. So getting to know people and knowing what opportunities they have available or contacts that they can share with you is only going to enhance your profile, is only going to enhance your perspective of life and how you're going to define your future career. There are also funding opportunities to get access to specialized instrumentation. And here's just an example of throughout the United States, different national laboratories where you can get access to pretty cool techniques. But in addition to this, is to think about trying to go to even another institution that might have an instrument that you don't have available at your home institution. And that can serve as a bridge between your campus and another campus to be able to not just drive your own work, but also to inspire other people to look at, like, where else can I go in order to enhance what I'm capable of doing? Because you're not confined by just your physical lab space. The lab space is to inspire you to think beyond the walls of your actual lab. All right, so something that I want to emphasize, and I think it's something that's culturally true universally, is that An effective story really captures your mind and it allows people to be able to really embrace the power of what you're trying to say. So I always tell my students, I tell other researchers, is that make sure that whatever you're trying to seek, that you need to be able to really capture the big picture. Make it clear, crystal clear, what you're trying to do. And then, as part of any proposal you're trying to do, you're figuring out funds that are going to help you to get those pieces that are going to, complete that picture. So very fundamental is capture that big picture. Why is it important to you, to the world at large, so that you can attract people to become interested and help you move forward. All right, so I will transition this into a focus on research, but I want you to know that many of the elements that I define here are going to be true generally. So what is a research proposal? So that is an organized and an innovative work plan to feasibly address an important scientific problem by applying fundamental science concepts. And I'm emphasizing that because even though I'm from a chemistry background, you have to be generally conscious of like the scientific method in order to define your proposal and use appropriate instrumentation and techniques. And so I emphasize that because it's the combination of the ideas, but also being aware of what tools you have available or what tools you can get access to, because that's what's going to be able to help you bring your ideas to life. So the expected duration of the project will be defined by the funding opportunity that you're seeking. So some funds are maybe for 1 year, some funds are for 2 years, longer. And so when you're trying to define a proposal, you have to think about the time frame. What is realistic? What is feasible in that time frame? And so I know that many of us are very ambitious, but sometimes if you put with just way too much, it's going to be obvious it's not going to be able to be accomplished in the time frame, and that would be something that's a limiting thing in terms of the success of receiving the funds. All right, so design a plan that can be feasibly accomplished within that window of time. So what is the research proposal? So in this proposal, you will present and contextualize a scientific problem, and you explain why this is an important problem. So it can be something that affects the local community. It can be something that affects more national, impact, or even larger than that. You are going to define your contribution towards tackling the scientific problem, explain what you intend to do. How does it complement or improve on gold standard approaches? Okay, so let's take a minute. What does that actually mean? What is a gold standard approach? Well, I put that in quotations, and the reason I do that is because oftentimes these are the approaches that are currently available with their limitations. And so what you're going to do is you're going to define, okay, this is what's currently available. And what I'm going to try to do is to try to either build onto that, complement it, okay? It may not necessarily be to replace it, okay? So that's a critical thing that you need to keep in mind. What is currently available? Is there a need for what you're trying to do? Okay, that's really important to establish. Is there an actual need? Because then that would give the value and the weight of your idea. So then you're going to establish specific aims. And so here it becomes a question about what type of proposal you're really going for is the number of aims. And the key thing is to be conservative. I'm going to emphasize, be realistic, be feasible in terms of time frame. So a minimum of 2, okay, for any proposal. But if it's something that goes on for, let's say, more than a year or 2, then you can add an extra aim, roughly 1 per year. Okay, so as part of this, you're going to define what are your short-term deliverables. So what does that mean? That means what are the specific products that you're going to get as a consequence of each experiment that you're going to do? And you're going to define what are your longer-term deliverables. Now, what does that mean? That means that what are you going to do with these products in terms of being able to accomplish the big picture of your project, but even going beyond that, being able to then disseminate this work, to do efforts like this to try to reach out to a public at large. In all of this, be realistic. What are you going to actually do? And so let's say that you're defining something. This is something that's a collaboration with the local cancer community. Okay, so yes, we would love to cure cancer, but a proposal is not going to be something that's going to say, I'm going to cure cancer, because cancer is a multitude of diseases, and it's going to be really difficult to be able to tackle it in, let's say, a 1-year proposal. So something that's going to be realistic is perhaps building towards, let's say, a drug design or maybe drug delivery or diagnostic of something. Okay, so be realistic in what you're seeking to do and what you'll be able to do. Okay, let's talk a bit about the written proposal in terms of formatting. So for the format, okay, it's really important to do is to, excuse me a second, we're having a technical problem here. All right. The key thing is to look carefully at the funding opportunity and see their manuals, their guidelines. So here's just an example. I'm giving you, here is the guidelines for the American Cancer Society, and I will say to you, every year I've seen changes in these manuals. So if you downloaded it last year, that's probably not going to be suitable for something you're trying to pursue this year. In addition, maybe not all the opportunities that were listed last year are available this year. So don't go into thinking like, oh, this is going to be available, so I'm just going to apply for this. These are the instructions, because you might be disappointed that like you did all that work and it's not even something that's available anymore. The same is very much true for the National Institute of Health and National Science Foundation, especially in this year, where many things have changed. So it's always important to look at the most recent set of instructions, and every agency, whether it's private like the American Cancer Society, whether it's something that's federal like the National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, to look at their guidelines. And so I'm just going to just click on, see if I can actually link to this for a moment. And so here's just to show you, you can scroll down and see all the different opportunities that they have available, frequently asked questions about, the different types of funding opportunities. Very critical is the deadlines. Pay attention to deadlines. Some agencies have very strict deadlines. Some are moving towards a practice of open-end deadlines, which is nice. But sometimes I actually like to have set deadlines because it puts pressure on me to make sure that I meet that. Um, and so it's very critical to look at what's available. So that's the one for American Cancer Society. Excuse me, not my email. Let's go back to, let's close this out. We don't want to see things that I go back here. All right, I'm going to click on the National Institute of Health. Let's see if I can open that up. So here, it's taking us a moment to open up. What you're going to find is a huge manual. And the thing is why it's huge is because it encompasses all of the different opportunities that they have available. So this is the general instructions for the NH and other PHS agencies released March 2025. So it's not necessarily it's within this cycle, the most recent. And what you're going to see is just scroll down a little bit. The table of contents gives you a really nice layout of everything that's included in here. And it also shows you the different types of funding opportunities that are available and the corresponding instructions. So that's going to be really important to look at this manual. So here, for instance, these are the listings of some of the types of funding. Here, for instance, is the specific instructions that are for research. Okay. But I will note to you that institutions like the NIH have their manuals, but they also have their funding opportunity announcement instructions that are specific for that funding. So it's a combination of reading those instructions plus referring to the manual for more insight or for specific things that you need to include. That combination is going to help to guide you to be able to navigate very well through what's required for completing your application. So I'm emphasizing that because what I want you to know is that all these agencies will provide you all the information that you're going to need. In addition, if you have any questions, you can reach out to people that are called the program officers. They're people that are accessible for you to, ask any questions of anything that you have in doubt. So just know that you have a lot of resources to your availability. Okay, let's move on then. Okay, so the format. So obviously it's going to vary a bit in terms of length, right? And so I'm gonna hit that point in a moment. But generally speaking, you're going to have what is your abstract. You're going to have a section that is your specific games, whether there's a specific page for your specific games or the specific games are built into the proposal. You will have a section that's your research strategy. That will be your actual approach, and that can range. We're going to hear about opportunities where the proposal is only 2 pages long. You're going to hear about, I'm referring to like if anything's NIH related, health related, it can go up to 12 pages. Okay, so it depends. But regardless of how short or how long, there are key things that you have to implement in your storytelling. And also very critical is to present a timeline. And in that timeline matches the time that the funding is available. Okay, and so it's very important to be conscious of that, but also to be feasible. You will have your references, your literature citation. Oftentimes, there may not be a page of them. However, the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship has it within their 2 pages, also the references. So you have to keep that in mind as well. You'll also have, for certain funding opportunities, your facilities, equipment, and other resources. Okay. And that is to make people aware of what you have available to you for you to be able to engage in your research. Also, it's also defined will be like the font size and what type of font you need to use. I'm just giving you an example that's pretty typical of the say of an NIH proposal. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you need to use that in order to fulfill the requirements of that particular agency. Don't think that that's just a suggestion. That's something that you have to follow in order to comply, and compliance is critical for funding. Okay, so what is the project summary abstract? So that's a concise description of the proposed work. You're going to state the proposal's broad long-term objectives. Here you're defining your scientific problem that is being addressed, and very briefly the specific aims. And you describe the research design and methods for achieving the specific aims. Then let's move on to the heart of the proposal, which is the specific aims. And there, in some proposals, you may have an actual page dedicated to it. In others, again, it's just built into it. So the specific aims are the well-defined objectives of the proposal, which will guide your experimental approach. The format is that you have an introduction, which is 1 to 2 paragraphs, where you provide a brief, big picture overview of your project. You briefly state the specific objectives of the proposed research, your contribution and innovation. You summarize the expected outcomes and what will be accomplished by the completion of the project. You describe the potential impact that the results of the proposed research will have on the research fields involved. Then, at the second half of this, you define the specific aims. And again, as I mentioned to you, will vary a minimum of 2, but you can be 1 per year. Okay. You define the title of the aim. If space allots, you provide a brief hypothesis and a brief description of the strategy to complete the aim. So that would finalize the specific aims page. Then we move on to the actual strategy itself. You formally present the scientific problem that will be addressed, and you describe your innovative contribution and define it with respect to complementing or improving upon current approaches or developing something for the first time. And so here's very critical. You can develop something for the first time, but you need to be able to then have sufficient preliminary data that supports the likelihood of success of what you're proposing. So there are some funding opportunities that are going to fund ideas, but always, even if they say it funds ideas and you don't need any preliminary data, you always need something to back you up. All right, so here you have your background and significance, where you present the scientific problem. What is the problem? What are the gold standards available? Then you present your innovation. What are you doing that's going to change the field to add on to what exists to tackle that problem? Then you define your approach. What are the set of experiments that you're going to do to feasibly tackle that innovation? So in the approach, you introduce or you reintroduce each specific aim. You describe the experimental plan to fulfill that aim. So that's your methodology, your analysis. You present preliminary data. You discuss expected outcomes, and also very importantly, and I see this missed a lot, you establish benchmarks for success and briefly define alternative plans. All right, so the background significance. Here you explain the importance of the scientific problem. You present the current approaches addressing the problem and the limitations, and that's critical. You want to define those limitations because then that's what you're going to use to compare, to contrast what you're doing that's going to try to overcome those limitations. So explain how the proposed project will address the scientific problem, improve scientific knowledge, and any relevant technical capability. The innovation then, that's the you. That's what's going to be the star of this proposal. You describe your novel theoretical concepts, approaches, methodologies, and instrumentation to be developed or used, and any advantage over existing ones. You explain refinements, improvements, or new applications of theoretical concepts, approaches, methodologies, and instrumentation that may already exist. And then we move on to the approach. And here, people can do it in a few different ways. One can be that you give a general introduction to then what you're going to do, or you can introduce your specific aims, and each aim will have its own approach. Okay, so it's a matter of how you want to do this. So I'm going to give you the way that I do it, which is I do a 1 to 2 paragraph summary of what's going to be the guiding workflow that I'm going to do to achieve all of my aims. So you describe the overall strategy, methodology, and analyses to accomplish the specific aims of the project while addressing how your work will address the limitations or lack thereof of current approaches. And introduce any collaborations, and that's critical, any collaborations that will help you accomplish your aims. Because oftentimes, let's say that your lab has certain expertise, but there's certain things that you're proposing that the lab does not necessarily have that expertise. That can be covered by having specific collaborators that can guide you to being successful in completing those goals. Then, after I've defined my overview of what I'm going to do, that's when I dive into my specific games. So I reintroduce the titles of specific games, and a little bit of redundancy is not bad. You have to keep in mind that maybe the readers of this won't read it linearly. Maybe they'll jump into this part, and you have to then bring in those specific games and not expect that they're going to go back to a different part that was a specific games page. So you reintroduce a specific game, 1 or 2 paragraphs, you describe the overall strategy, the experiments, critical analyses for the aim. Then you present the formal experimental plan. You have your key experiments that will be done. And I say key, big picture experiments. What we don't want to see are trivial things like temperatures that you propose to do things, volumes, concentration, unless they're for some reason, for whatever reason, may be super important. Otherwise, leave them out. Okay, we're not reading a manuscript, a scientific publication. We're reading the big picture experiments that you're going to do. Describe any positive or negative controls briefly, okay, and describe the instrumentation techniques that will be used and how they will be specifically implemented. And here's a key area I see many proposals have a weakness, where people will just say, I will use this instrument, and then they move on. And it's not even clear that they even know what that instrument is and how exactly is going to benefit their project. And then you present the formal analysis plan, another weakness that I've seen, where we don't have a sense of how they're going to actually analyze, dig into this data. So explain what programs or software will be used to analyze your data. Explain how you will analyze your data to determine whether an experiment was performed successfully. Avoid being overly general, and I see this often. For instance, in the chemistry world, I see students say this, I'm going to do NMR to characterize my compound. And that literally says nothing. Okay. NMR is a technique, but it's not even a specific type of experiment. Okay. I see it often, and I tell students that means nothing. So you want to give something that is in it brief. Again, the key thing is to be brief, but that actually says something that makes the person understand, okay, they know what they're saying about that particular experiment. Then you present the preliminary results, and so that's critical that you have something to support that this is going to be very likely to succeed. You include the raw process data and analysis of any relevant conclusion thus far. Obviously, it's preliminary. You define expected outcomes when there's no preliminary results. So maybe not every aim will have preliminary results, and that's fine. Okay, but there should be some amount of it, and then where there isn't any preliminary result, you should have some literature background that helps to support the likelihood of the work. You discuss benchmarks for success. And so those are going to be what are the critical goals I need to reach in order for me to say that this specific game succeeded and that I can successfully move on to other aspects of the work. And so, with that in mind, is that you can also think about inherent limitations in your work where you will offer alternative strategies. If, let's say that my current set of experiments may not work out, well, I have these other resources that I could use that I can then try to make this particular specific game work out. Okay, so the alternative strategy is critical. Students often miss this, but it's critical so that you have, your plan A. That's your main proposal, the plan A. But you also have your plan B, maybe C, and that's your alternative strategies. Not every experiment has to be successful in order for you to reach a critical mass of data to define the success for completing your specific aims. Again, there's a certain benchmark you need to reach. And that benchmark is certainly not, I need to get this 100%. Okay. Because not everything is actually going to work out. Because not all experiments will be successful, what alternative strategies and work plans can you use to achieve the necessary end goal? And then you're basically going to use the same strategy for the subsequent aims. So I'm not going to be redundant because that's basically how it is. It's pretty repetitive at that point. All right, I'm going to hit a few other things as is relevant to several other types of opportunities. The intellectual merit. And that is a statement on intellectual merit that describes the potential of the proposed project to advance knowledge, hence intellectual merit. Describe what new concept or content is being developed that can be applied for scientific education. Because the goal is not that you're just going to publish this somewhere and no one's ever going to read that again, is that it actually has real impact. So it's not just publishing, it's doing things like this, educating others and how they can use that information. And then, let's see. Describe how you plan to engage in scientific communication using the output and outcome of your work. Think about your community, your local community, the community at large. So going to conferences, or it can even be just going to an outreach effort to, let's say, provide education to a young child that you can implement some things from your research. So research conferences, peer review publication, primary research, review articles, academic outreach, public outreach. Broader impacts. The statement on broader impacts should describe the potential of the proposed project to benefit society and contribute to the achievement of specific desired societal outcomes. Your research is designed to be of value to the community at large. Consider who will be directly benefited by it and think about how you can reach to them. How can this information be communicated to the population of interest? And then here's just a really like generic timeline. And obviously, if a proposal is only 2 pages long, you can fill this up like this. But just to give you an overview of breaking down to the number of years, what specific things you're going to achieve, and as part of it, what specific outcomes you're going to get that are part of the dissemination process, the outreach process. You have your references. That's pretty inherent to a proposal. But what's critical here is that it has to have a combination of relevant older literature, which establishes the field, but the current literature, especially if you're trying to compare yourself to current gold standards. So include references that support the feasibility of your proposed specific games and strengthen your innovation. And also, very importantly, your facilities, equipment, and other resources. Okay, that must be part of your proposal. It is vital to the success of your project and the efficiency of your time and effort devoted to it to be aware of the instruments, tools, and techniques available to you in your laboratory and also in the laboratories of others that you're collaborating with, and in instrumentation centers at your availability. Wherever there is a limitation in the facilities, your home facilities, contact collaborators who are willing to help you with your project. Networking is key. So here's just an example of my equipment that I put in one of my proposals. I also like to include pictures because pictures can communicate far more than actual words can. Additional factor to consider. Science is a very visual thing. And if you want to capture the mind of people, then as far as your effective storytelling, include visuals. And so I have an example of visual. I'm not the best artist, but there are a lot of tools now available to your use to try to make things that are effective in terms of capturing ideas. But also part of this is the language itself. Okay, so we're going to talk about this. So chemistry, and I meant to write this as science in general, but it's a very visual field, and it's important to incorporate key images that help the reader to have a clear view of the bigger picture of the proposal. And I keep emphasizing it, the bigger picture, the story that you're trying to tell, and of the specific games. Whenever possible, make your own images. There are a number of programs available. For chemists, we use ChemDraw to create our chemical structures. There's BioRender, which helps you to have, simple illustrations of biological things that you're probably trying to probe. Make sure to include high resolution images. I often see blurry images, and it really bothers me because the aesthetics can really tell how much effort you put into it. When including molecular structure, attention to bond lengths and angles is of utmost importance. And I say that for chemists, but I mean that for any field. Whatever is true to your field, make sure that you're putting something that is actually field appropriate. So visuals can be half page width, depending on the formatting of your proposal, full page width. So if it's a 2-page proposal, you probably want to have images that are on this half a page width where you can put enough information, but maybe not encompassing all of the actual space for writing. Something very important is when you create your images, is create them in the size that you intend to put them into your article, into your manuscript. Often I see students make these huge pictures and then they reduce them, they shrink them, and it's completely unreadable. It's just, you cannot decipher it. And as much as I say, pre-size it, they don't. And what ends up happening is it becomes blurry, it becomes something that you can't assess, and it makes it me hard to understand even what they're doing. And so if I lose interest in what they're doing, what's going to happen if a reviewer is reading your proposal is not going to be successful. So here's just an example of a visual. It's not anything mind-blowing, but what I want to show here is that I'm trying to capture the big project that I'm doing. And so I'm showing that something that I'm creating are specific questions that I'm trying to address as part of whatever it is that I call TI1V IC, whatever that is, how I'm putting into a selling environment and what specific things I'm trying to look at. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the details of what that is even about, but it's something like that. It's as simple as like taking that visual and coupling it with what words that I put into the proposal that's going to help them to be like, I see what that person is trying to do. Another critical thing is language. Write in simple and easy to comprehend language for a broad scientific audience, unless the funding opportunity is meant for a specialized evaluation. So there you want to be then more jargon specific. But as much as possible, keep the language simple. English tends to be the universal language for science, but there are many opportunities that are in non-English. No, regardless of language, keep it simple, but also keep it concrete. I see a lot people using AI where AI tends to make things give phrases that sound like they're saying something profound and they mean absolutely nothing. So critical is to be as concrete as possible as to what you're trying to say, especially when it comes to experiments. So use simple language. It helps the big picture of a proposal stand out and be more accessible. Accessibility is key for any person reading this. So there may be experts reading this, but if they're not understanding what you're trying to say, then they feel like there's like a barrier between what you're proposing and their comprehension, and that barrier makes them more resistant to even thinking about going forward. That might be just instant reject right there because I can't make sense of what you're saying. So avoid pretentious vocabulary. If you want to sound intelligent, oftentimes that has the opposite effect on me. There's like this person's trying to sound intelligent without actually saying anything of significance. And also make things much more difficult to understand. Minimize overly specific jargon and define all abbreviations. Okay, so how to begin? And so I'm just going to say a few things before I turn over to the stars of this event. Where to begin? So for chemists, there's always this activation barrier. So here is this, we start off at a certain energy point, and there's this huge activation barrier. And so especially when it's for you that are trying to tackle something for the first time, especially students trying to even engage in writing a proposal, and it may seem overwhelming. There's just so much to do. So what I want to try to talk about is how can we make this activation barrier so that you can get to this point where you are actually more stable, more confident, more capable of being successful in what you're trying to achieve. So one thing I want to emphasize is that I very much dislike this idea of people giving this impression that because you're a student, you have a lot of deficiencies that you need to overcome. You all are very capable of being successful what you're trying to do because you are living in a time that is very distinct from the time that I live in. I lived in a time where I had to run into the library to find a journal, written page, and it was just something that was just like static. You're in a time where you have many resources available to then, sit down and really dive into the work. And I would suggest to you take advantage of that. Don't skip steps by using AI to help you create ideas. Read a lot of things that you have accessible because that's what's going to empower you and make you be able to achieve things. So, this imposter syndrome, as a professor, I'm a student for life. So I'm always learning. And I'm certainly not going to think of myself as being lesser than. I just someone who embraces trying to learn things. So I personally like to find my muse for a particular paper. I find pop music very inspiring. Okay, so I have no problem engaging in pop songs. So there'll be CDs for specific papers, CDs for specific grants. Happens a lot. So back in the day of this particular CD is Beyonce's Lemonade. That was an amazing CD that I played nonstop for a particular paper. Taylor Swift, Folklore, she made me a believer then. Although both of these two recent CDs have not so much been inspiring, but whatever. That's, our muse is sometimes disappointing us, but that's where you find a different muse. Also, do engage in the arts. So here's an example of going to movies or theaters or go to a conference. Because oftentimes seeing what other people are doing is really inspiring to me. That stuff that I'm not doing, that then makes me think like maybe I can try that or implement that approach. Talk to leaders of the field. So this is Debbie Krantz in my particular field, someone that was my role model when I was a grad student. Now I can even call her a colleague, but still I see her as someone, up there that I always try to aspire to. And read. Read the simple act of just getting down and just like have your coffee there if you drink coffee to stay alert because there's nothing more powerful about seeing, something so well written to inspire your own methods of effectively conveying a story. So, finding inspiration, look to the arts to study how stories are crafted. Immerse yourself in articles to learn the language and techniques of your field. Attend talks that stimulate your mind on how to design and execute experiments. Read, read, and read some more. Okay, I will emphasize that that's going to be what guides you to be as efficient as possible. There are no shortcuts. AI is not going to get it. You need to be one who empowers yourself because, yes, there are classes, there are teachers, but you have to learn how to self-teach. And then create your writing space. So I cannot work in clutter. I have to have a space that's like conditioned for me to be as optimal as possible in my writing process. Now, that may not always happen, okay? We are very busy scientists. We have like different things that we attend to, classes, students that we have to mentor. There's a lot of things that you may want to call them distractions. I think they're inspiring in their way, but they have to find even those 5 minutes where you have that ability to connect and really connect to what you're trying to write. So begin the formal writing process, take thorough notes of everything that you've read and learned. Prepare an annotated bibliography of relevant articles. I mean that be interactive with what you're reading. Start writing by following the examples of your role models. I certainly did. I created my way of writing by looking at things that I thought were well written until you develop your own style. Then the last thing is requesting letters of recommendation. So the strength of your proposal is enhanced by outstanding letters of recommendation. Plan early and be mindful of the time and effort of your professors, the people that you're going to contact to be your letters of reference. So how do we do this? We're going to send a formal email or submit an official letter if you want to do something like that, requesting from your professor that you want them to write you a letter of support. But you need to provide them with resources, okay? You need to provide them with a curriculum vitae because that helps to, give them a context of who you are besides how they knew you. And it's very critical that they know you very well, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the laboratory, whether it's some other engagement within the academic community. A complete list of all programs that you're applying to and what exactly is the opportunity. Because oftentimes I get just links to things, but I'm not sure what exactly are you applying for graduate school? Are you applying for like a fellowship? It's not always clear, and you don't want a professor to write like this person would be great for this chemistry laboratory, and it's like something for a fellowship because then it becomes very clear that you did not communicate this very well. Provide contact names if relevant, and also what is the submission process? Will there be links that are going to be received? And if there are going to be links, make sure that you give those links well ahead of time, not the day of. And let the professor know what the deadlines. I like to know 2 weeks in advance when I need to submit something. And then I will be critical if I get something that's due for the next day. I will try to do it, but know that we have our own lives. And, we can't just stop what we're doing just because, you forgot to do something on time. Be prepared to write your own letters for some professors. Okay, so that can be daunting, and some students be like, "Oh, that lazy professor." You know what? That actually might be really valuable to you because then you can put everything that you believe that professor should be talking about that they may not even remember, and so that gives you the opportunity. Gives actually a number of it actually gives you power to really craft it in a way that reflects how they can envision you to be able to be successful for what you're applying for. So yes, maybe some of us are lazy, but actually there's an opportunity for you to be able to craft something that will help you to stand out. So words of wisdom. Be open to constructive criticism and be mindful about how to effectively convey the story of your proposal. Prepare your proposal ahead of time. Seek constructive feedback. Optimize your proposal. So with all this, the goal of this seminar is to help you lower that activation barrier so that we're at a starting point that's basically matched the energy that we're at We have our tools available, we have our team, and then we can be able to be successful and reach this lower energy, really successful point. Because I believe in you and I know you can do it. All right, with that, then I'm going to turn over to our first student speaker. Let me stop sharing here. And let me share his. Sorry. I'm going to introduce you first, Gustavo. All right. So give me a second. All right, so our first student speaker is Gustavo Porrata. He is a synthetic organic chemist, doctoral candidate in organic chemistry at the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras. His research in the supermolecular chemistry group focuses on the design and study of supermolecular G quadruplet scaffolds for multi-enzymatic cascade reactions, employing a wide range of synthetic methodologies and advanced NMR characterization. Previously, he did research at his alma mater, UPR Galle. He also did research at Marquette University and Penn State University, gaining experience in catalysis, organometallic chemistry, quantum material, and mechanistic analysis. Gustavo has extensive laboratory expertise in synthetic organic techniques, chromatography, spectroscopy, and dynamic covalent chemistry, and has mentored undergraduate students as a graduate researcher and lab manager. As a former teaching assistant for organic chemistry, he has taught core laboratory principles, reaction mechanisms, safety practices. He has presented his research at the National ACS and also regional conferences, the NSF LSAMP, RICE conferences, and also a number of symposia at the university. He has contributed to outreach initiatives such as this one, promoting STEM education in Puerto Rico. He was a recipient of the NSF PR LSMP Bridge to the Doctor Fellowship, but more recently was received the very prestigious NSF Graduate Research Fellowship. And he hopes to be able to use his doctoral degree, once he achieves it, to have a career in academia and the pharmaceutical industry. With that introduction, I'll turn it over to Gustavo.
Good morning. My name is Gustavo, and I'm going to be talking about a little bit of insights into the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship. But what I talk here is applicable to other fellowship opportunities. And so I want to talk briefly about the NSF GRFP, the background and history. And so interestingly, this is one of the oldest NSF funded programs, which is from 1952 until present. And basically, it's a 3-year funding fellowship.
It looks like it went off for a second.
Okay.
Okay, like when I disconnected. Perdón.
No worry. Okay, so the NSF GRFP is one of the oldest funded programs, and it's been around since 1952 until now. And it offers 3 years of funding, $37,000 in stipend, and $16,000 for tuition and research materials. Very important is for master's and PhD students. The NSF had recent changes in their guidelines, and so previously it was for first-year grad students and second-year grad students. Now it's for first-year graduate students, but you can also apply as a senior undergrad. So you essentially have 2 opportunities to apply. If you don't get it as a senior undergrad, then you can reapply for it as a first-year graduate students, and it's for U.S. citizens. And so what are the application components, or what is the anatomy of this NSF GRFP application? And so you have the personal statement, you have a research proposal, you have the letters of recommendation, and you have transcripts. And so let's talk a little bit about each of these components. And I want to start first with transcripts because I think those are the easiest application component. And so I would suggest to request your transcripts to the university at least 1 month in advance. They do have to be clear and readable transcripts, meaning they have to be in PDF format, and they don't need to be password protected, because if they're password protected, the NSF will automatically decline your application and you will not get the fellowships. And so for me, I had to include both the undergraduate and graduate transcripts at the time that I was applying. So please request them at least 1 month in advance. And depending on the recent NSF guidelines, in my case, it could be unofficial transcripts. For this year's application, it was an official transcript. And so you need to do that well, at least 1 month in advance. And so let's talk about letters of recommendation. And so I like to think about letters of recommendation, and you have three types of letters of recommendation. You have good recommendation letters, you have excellent recommendation letters, and you have legendary recommendation letters. For this and other types of fellowship, do you want a good recommendation letter? Do you want an excellent recommendation letter? Yeah, sort of, but you definitely want a legendary recommendation letter. And so that's very important because your letters of recommendation are the thing that will bolster your application, and it's the only requirement that's not in your hands. And so that's very important to choose your people wisely, or who you ask for letters of recommendation. And so there's this common misconception that if I take a course with a professor and say I got an A in the course, so I will ask the professor for a recommendation letter, that's like a no-no. Like that doesn't mean anything. Your professor cannot say, oh, he went to class every day, he got an A, so he's an excellent candidate for this fellowship and others. That's like, no, like, bruh, no, don't do that. You're only plunging yourself into not getting the fellowship. And so this boils down. So who can I choose to give me letters of recommendation? And essentially, you need to choose people who can talk about your research abilities, intellectual merits, and broader impacts. And so for the NSF GRFP, there are over 16,000 applicants, and each of those applicants have done research experience, they have done outreach. And so the people who you choose, the question you can ask is, what can they say about you that distinguishes you from the rest of the applicants, which are excellent candidates as well from competitive universities? And so, how can you help your recommenders? You need to ask that recommendation letter at least 1 month in advance. That's very, very important. If you ask a letter of recommendation and the deadline is like 1 week, you're not giving that professor the time to actually make a legendary letter of recommendation. You can also help them by sending them your CV, the deadline, and obviously, if it's for a fellowship, then this is our research fellowship that I'm applying to. So you need to state that very clearly in the email. And also, there are guidelines for your recommenders that they need to follow to submit that letter for the fellowship. And so you need to send those guidelines for them to draft their letters. You don't want your professors to actually look for information outside of that email because you're only complicating their lives. And the professors are already busy submitting their own grants, let alone they need to have it easy for them to send your letters of recommendation. And so I just want to talk briefly about who I chose for my letters of recommendation. I chose, obviously, my research advisor because my research advisor can talk about my broader impacts, my intellectual merits. I chose Dr. Daris Pinheiro because she was the co-PI of the NSF Bridge to Doctorate Program Fellowship, and she could talk about my research strategies, my broader impacts, but also compliance with a previous NSF fellowship. And so if you're already affiliated with NSF, that gives you extra points for the NSF GRFP. And so I chose her because she could talk about my compliance with a previous NSF fellowship. In the case of Dr. Joseph Clark, I did research with him in Marquette University, where I did organometallic chemistry, and he could focus more on my intellectual merits. And Dr. Mayra Pagan, which was my undergrad orgo professor, was the person that actually ignited my flame for organic chemistry. And so she could address that in her letters of recommendation. And so that's basically the people that I chose. So you need to take that into consideration when you're choosing your letters of recommendation for this fellowship or others. And so let's talk about the personal statement. Typically, the fellowship at our level, graduate level or undergrad level, requires a personal statement. In the case of the NSF GRFP, is actually a 3-page personal statement. You have to include intellectual merits and broader impacts, and those need to be in bold and need to be highlighted in your personal statement. In your personal statement, you have to include research experiences, outreach, publications, and future goals. And I emphasize future goals because they're funding you, but they're also funding your potential as a scientist and a leader in your field. And so if you only talk about your past experiences, they won't have the notion of who you will become as a scientist and the potential in to be a leader in your field. So future goals don't have to be extensive, but they do need to know what is your plan on the long term, whether you want to pursue research in academia, industry, and how are you going to be established as a scientist in your field. And so basically, for personal statements, let's take a page out of Disney. And Disney is a really excellent storyteller. And so take that advice, tell your story, be your own hero of your own story. That's very important. And the second thing you want is to grab the attention of your reviewers. So tell your story, grab attention. That's very, very important. And so talk about your research experiences and your role in them. And so, for the broader impacts, both the intellectual merits and broader impacts are a pivotal component for your application. And I mentioned outreach, the outreach, the outreach. NSF greatly values how will you convey your knowledge to other people who are not immersed in science. And so that's very, very important. And when you look at winning NSF, GRFP, fellowship, and fellows, the one thing they had in common is that they addressed how they were going to share their knowledge in science with people who are not immersed in the science fields. And so I say it again, most, if not all, of the applicants have done research. So, what makes you different than them? So, key questions to ask here is what ideas do you propose to make science accessible? And you need to address how can the NSF GRFP or other fellowships help you with this? I framed it for the NSF GRFP, but this applies to every fellowship you apply to. And so, talking about attention getters, I want to read what I said. It doesn't have to be like this. And so, I just want to briefly read the first paragraph that I wrote for my NSF GRFP. And so, it goes like the backstory of every scientist is different. Their paths may seem linear, but they are not. Most suffered through hardships to get to where they are. And so, one wonders then, what is the backstory of scientists that got them to be successful? In my case, my backstory dates to walking in my school's hallways and hearing, there is no place in this world for people like you, little homo. I vividly remember my peers telling me that I possess attributes that resembled a girl. Little did I know that these words would be the catalyst and motivation that propelled me to become the successful and passionate gay Latino organic chemist I am today. Obviously, I framed it as bro, I have seen multiple attention getters. I saw one NSF GRFP winning fellowship that he started talking about when he was a kid and he was building Legos and how that got him to be a successful synthetic chemist because he saw molecules as potential Legos that he can manipulate on. And so, very important. This may seem like a sob story, like, oh, I went through this, give me the money. But NSF wants hero stories. Like, if you're continually giving them sob stories, you're gonna bore them and you're gonna say, "Oh, you just only want the money because you went through hurricanes, earthquakes, or you went through this and that." And very important, if you want to highlight stuff like that, you want to frame it in a positive way for NSF. NSF loves being the hero of NSF GRFP fellows. And so let's talk about the research proposal. In the case of for NSF, it's a 2-page document. So everything you want to put in your research needs to be contained within those 2 pages. So again, intellectual merits and broader impacts. Novelty and creativity is greatly valued in these pages. And so that needs to be addressed in your NSF GRFP fellowship materials in the research proposal. And so I just want to give what sub-themes I put in my research proposal. The first thing I put is a small paragraph of the background research areas. Your reviewers are not necessarily experts in your field and in the field you're proposing. And so you need to ground them with previous literature on what is your research area and what are the limitations of that research area. And then after the background, you want to go immediately into the main problem, clearly stated in at least 1 or 2 sentences. And after that paragraph, you will go directly to proposed research, and you can put it actually proposed research in parentheses, put intellectual merits, and you're already addressing that in your application components. And so you should put how are you going to solve this problem and what strategies are you going to use to circumvent this main problem within your research area. And so the after that, I put my hypotheses and expected outcomes. And so that's very important because they need to be aware of what is in your field, but what you expect to obtain with your proposed research. The number of aims you put in this fellowship, be mindful that it's a 3-year fellowship. And so if it's a 3-year fellowship, do not put 5 aims. In my case, I only put 2 aims, and I framed it at least 1.5 years for my first aim and 1.5 years for my second aim. Really structured aims, really well-devised aims. 2 aims are better than 3 general aims. So that's very important. And at least for I did only 2 aims. And I mean, I was successful because I'm talking here about the NSF GRFP. And so that's very important because it's not only a 2-page document in this case. One thing that I put right after talking about my research and my aims was a troubleshooting paragraph. It doesn't need to be an extensively long paragraph because it's only a 2-page document, but troubleshooting means that you anticipate challenges and are prepared for them. And this increases the likelihood of funding. And so one of my reviewers, one of his feedback was that actually what bolstered the application was actually including this troubleshooting paragraph because it let them know that I was prepared to I was anticipated for these challenges, and so that increases the likelihood of funding, at least for the NSF GRFP. And any fellowship, you should include troubleshooting experiments because you're anticipating challenges. This is my favorite part because when we talk about fellowships, we usually frame them as we are the people who are writing the fellowships, but we rarely think about our reviewers. And so if you're applying for any fellowship, this is like the utopia. You want this reaction of your reviewers. You want them to read your components and be like, wow, this is amazing. And so I just want to put things in perspective. For the NSF GRFP, I submitted my application in October and I was notified of the outcome in April. There are really distracting periods between October and April. And I just want to talk about October, we have Halloween. November, there's Thanksgiving. November, there's also Black Friday. December, we have Christmas. We have in January, New Year's. And in February, Valentine's Day. What do I mean and why do I bring this up? It's that your reviewers are extensively prone to distraction. And your reviewers are humans, they're not robots. And so you must give them a really good reason to read your application materials and not bore them to death because they're heavily distracted. So again, your reviewers are human. So what your reviewers look like, they're typically PIs. PIs are looking to write manuscripts. They want to publish. They're in group meetings. They have their own families. They're writing grants in the same period they have to review yours. And so that's very important. As a human, if you're a PI, the most important thing for you is actually your own grants. And so within that time frame they have for writing their own grants, they have some time to read your application components. If you bore them, you're not going to get the fellowship. So that's very important to highlight. They're humans. They like Netflix, HBO Max. They're with their families. They're in traffic jams. They have personal situations. And so you must make them read your application components. And how do you do that? Attention getters, have a really good research proposal. And so keep continuously captivating their attention so that you wind up being a potential candidate and a really good candidate for the NSF GRFP fellowship and other fellowship opportunities. And so Dr. Tinoco was talking about his muse. He needs the muse to write. I also need the muse to write. But for me, I don't want to say that thanks to Dua Lipa, I have the NSF GRFP fellowship, but every time I wrote something of the NSF GRFP, most likely I was listening to Dua Lipa in my comfort zone. And so I do need to thank her for it, even though she didn't help me at all, at least like writing and stuff. I find it comfort watching a lot of series. Whenever I had writer's block, I would just swing by, watch a series. and I saw something in the series like would bolster my application. Go, oh, I can do this, like use this imagery in my personal statement. I love Lady Gaga. I love Wednesday. I love House of the Dragon, Walking Dead, Alice in Borderland. Basically, we're humans, and so we have sometimes writer's block. And what helps you the most will definitely help you to write the NSF fellowship and other types of fellowship. So even though I talked about the NSF GRFP, there is also other fellowships, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute Gilliam Fellowship, which my colleague Carmen will talk about, but there's also the NIH F31 Fellowship, which is a really prestigious fellowship. We have here the NASA Space Grant Consortium, the Center for Resilience to Climate Change, which is in Rio Piedras. We have DOE fellowships as well. And so be mindful of the opportunities because they are there. We just need to look for them. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight for NSF GRFP, we need to value constructive criticism. And so if I would have not looked for criticism from my colleagues, professors, etc., I would have not get the fellowship. And so I just want to put in notion the amount of people that I receive feedback from. Obviously, some of them, if you know NSF GRFP fellows, then those are the people that you want to write to read your statements and proposal. And so this is just basically the amount of people that gave me feedback. Interestingly, the most destructive feedback I got was actually from my undergrads. And so I think they're really good at that, providing those insane feedback that will get you humble but make your application stronger. And so professors, PIs, postdocs, they have really good feedback because they have already a doctoral degree and are obviously previous NSF fellows. And so, with that being said, I just want to end with a quote like, if your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough. Sometimes you're like, oh, this is a prestigious fellowship. I'm not going to get it. And so that's like wrong thing to do. The only sure way you're not going to get it is to not apply. And so apply to everything there is because it's like a probability. The more you apply to fellowships, the likelihood you increase to actually win one of the fellowships. And so if you dream and are not scared of dreaming, then you might one day receive an email like this where you actually get congratulated because you have the NSF, you are officially an NSF GRFP fellow. And so, talking a little bit aside from the NSF fellowship, so most of you know because of I posted it a lot in my social media. I'm competing in chemistry contest in Chemical Engineering News, where I submitted a picture of my supramolecular polymer with the help of Dr. Perla Cruz Tato, and so I want to win. And so just please enter in the Chemical Engineering News and I humbly ask that you vote for my picture because we're already like in the semifinals. Next week is the finals. And so I just wanted to tell you that if you have questions, comments, feedback, please let me know and thank you for your attention. Oh, this is my contact information just in case. So please, if you have questions, comments, or feedback, don't be ask away.
¿Sientes que de alguna manera el grado de la beca en tu primer año de las cosas que tuviste previamente te ayudó de una forma de guía para poder conseguir esta última que tuviste?
¿Te refieres a BDP?
Sí.
Sí, sí, me ayudó mucho porque uno de los requisitos para BDP es aplicar a la GRFP. Y no solo es un requisito, sino que te ayudan a cómo aplicar. Y BDP trae un recurso que es Michael Westreet, que no lo mencioné porque eran muchas personas, que él se especializa en dar este tipo de seminarios de cómo aplicar a la GRFP para que tú tengas la oportunidad de ganártela también. Así que yo diría que NSF BDP fue crucial en haberme ganado la GRFP.
Así que tú recomendarías a cualquier persona que esté interesado en tener un tipo de beca que haga un plan previo sobre cuál sería el proceso adecuado o el camino para llegar a lo mismo.
Sí, sí, definitivamente sí. De los consejos más importantes es, por ejemplo, yo conozco mucha gente de UPR Calle que se llevó la JRFP. So, esas fueron las primeras personas que yo contacté ellos me enviaran su escrito. Y increíblemente, 9 de 10 personas que tienen la JRFP te envían los escritos y te dicen que te pueden ayudar en el proceso de revisión. Así que yo nunca tuve un no de una persona que se llevó la JRFP que yo le pidiera ayuda. Y mucha gente me ayudó, postdocs, PIs, subgraduados, mi mamá, mi abuela me ayudó un montón en el personal statement. Me dice como que esto no tiene sentido, esto no eres tú, cambia esto, cambia aquello, cambia lo otro. Así que cualquier persona que tú encuentres que te pueda dar feedback es muy, muy bienvenido.
¿Y cómo fue el proceso de evaluación anual de tu progreso de por parte de la beca hacia ti?
O sea, ok, sí, sí. Sí, sí. En verdad es, por ejemplo, para tú tener un momentum en escuela graduada, definitivamente el someter progresos a la beca ayuda bastante porque tú siempre estás como que sin perder el tiempo, como que sabes que tienes que someter el progreso para que el próximo año te den fondos. Así que eso es una manera como autocatalítica de tú avanzar en tu progreso por parte de los requisitos de la universidad, pero también porque necesitas los fondos para seguir con la beca. Así que definitivamente la JRFP tiene esa particularidad. Yo creo que todas las becas, tú tienes que someter un informe de progreso y lo beneficioso es que no tienes límite de páginas. O sea, que tú puedes incluir toda la data, lo que hiciste, tanto los broader impacts como que los seminarios que tú das, etcétera, porque eso también es otra cosa. No es solo el research, es los broader impacts, las conferencias que tú hiciste, qué seminarios diste, los outreach, así que es muy beneficioso y te ayuda a mantener un progreso bastante notable.
Algún reporte actuario, el gobierno federal, ¿te has sentido preocupado sobre tu estabilidad en términos de la beca? ¿O el programa ha sido un poco ayudante en eso para hacerte sentir cómodo y que no te preocupes tanto y que la puedas perder en algún momento?
Pues mira, en verdad, siendo bien sincero, o sea, cuando yo apliqué a la beca, yo en abril me habían dado un honorable mention, porque habían dado, esta beca le dan a 2.000 personas en un buen año que tengan bastante dinero. Y en enero ellos dieron 500 becas más y ahí yo caí en el cohorte de que le dieron las becas. So, yo pasé de un honorable mention a ser ¿verdad? Un estudiante que tiene la beca como tal. Y con respecto a la incertidumbre de si el año que viene me van a renovar los fondos, definitivamente sí. Es algo que pues tengo presente porque es bien difícil que te digan, felicidades, tienes la beca, pero tú no sabes si el año que viene te la van a renovar por X o Y razón de decisión del gobierno. Y yo creo que esto no es único de NSF. Yo estoy seguro que los de NIH, los de NASA, los del DOE sienten exactamente lo mismo porque, en fin, es dinero gubernamental, federal, así que sí.
I don't believe that NSF is actually aware of this in terms of being able to fund their graduate work. So in that, it's not actually so much the actual project, where some of the cuts that they have been projects that may not necessarily align with the administration. But when it comes to this type of fellowship, that's probably why this one has been successful and continuing on, because there is a cycle that's going to be, is because that they're actually awarding the students and their potential for science and what they might actually be able to do as opposed to necessarily the project that they're doing. That's why there's not necessarily a concern that he will get cut because of the project, because they're not actually awarding the project.
Ujú.
Yes, for everybody, thank you for this presentation. It was very informative. And a lot of the times, I imagine, especially when you're a graduate student, it can be like really overwhelming to even think of what do you start writing, how do you even set the tone for your personal statement, and so on. Uh, but I really like you mentioned that you applied last year, basically,
Ujú.
right? So given some of the changes in this current cycle regarding uh, the knockdown on DEI programs and inclusive language,
Ujú.
what sort of things would you recommend for applicants that also like are minorities, like Latinos? And how can we ensure that be carefully design our personal statements to remain impactful and reflect our personal experiences without necessarily being out of different steps.
So I would say, like, for example, my attention getter definitely included a lot of DEI, but I don't think I got the fellowship. I mean, I don't think I would have not gotten the fellowship if I have put this in this application cycle, because that was like just a small portion of my personal statement. The NSF, the review criteria is basically intellectual merits and broader impacts. And so if you address those, whether you mention some component of the EI, you will get the fellowship if you meet those criteria, because regardless, you're you're telling them that you have the potential to be a successful leader in your field. And so that's like the most important thing, at least for this fellowship, regardless of whether you use DEI or don't use DEI. The important thing that I said to like the students that I helped with this application cycle is you can put that DEI component, but if it's the only focus of your fellowship and you don't meet the review criteria, then you're not gonna get the fellowship, because the both your proposal and research, your personal statement, the root is your intellectual merits and broader impacts and future goals. If you address those, then you're complying with the NSF guidelines to be considered for giving this fellowship.
Yeah, I want to add to what he had just mentioned. Even in this current administration, there's still funding opportunities for limited, for universities that have limited resources. So it's not that they're restricting, this idea of trying to reach out to those that are limited. It's just a matter of like being careful about making it all about identity when it's supposed to be about the intellectual.
Mhm.
That's why what Gustavo was saying is very critical, that you can still implement the things that make you, the personal, and to say that you want to take your science and impact your local community. That's never going to change. Because the local community is part of the United States, like that's going to be beneficial regardless. So people should feel comfortable saying that I want to take what I want to do and figure out who in my community will be impacted by it, and I want to spread that information to them. So there's nothing that you should be worried about implementing those ideas into your present state.
Mhm.
All right, so just one last thing. So I know that you did this proposal for this program. How much of this was your idea? And I'm not to take away anything for you, because there's always this question about like, is it the student's proposal? Is it the mentor help here? So talk us a little bit about.
So interestingly, while I was applying for the NSF GRFP, I was also taking the scientific writing course. And so for the scientific writing course, I had to design a proposal. But in reality, my mentor helped in crafting the big idea, but I still had to develop the aims and how I was going to approach my project, potential limitations. And so uh, the big picture was the idea of my mentor, but the specifics behind the planned experiments, troubleshooting experiments, well, that was something that I had to develop because I had to do so for the scientific writing course. And so I took that course to my advantage to also help me apply that to my proposal.
That's great. And that's what makes a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
All right, another response from Gustavo. Thank you so much.
All right, so let me switch over to our next speaker. Let's make sure I don't make a mistake here like I did. I'm gonna close some things there. All right. All right, so we're gonna have Carmen Acosta to come up here. All right, so just want to give a quick introduction to our speaker. So
So Carmen Acosta is a PhD candidate in chemistry at the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Grande, specializing in medicinal inorganic chemistry. Her graduate work, she's actually doing under my mentorship, focuses on the synthesis and characterization of dual-chelated conjugates designed to develop bimetallic anti-cancer compounds. She already has a number of publications, including publications in JACS Gold, ACS Omega, and recently in Inorgánica Química Acta. She earned her bachelor's degree in industrial chemistry from the University of Puerto Rico at Humacao, where she gained early research experience under Mirna Rivera, synthesizing chalcones with anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory potential. She later worked as a stability chemist at Gombe Products and a quality control chemist at Galifar, acquiring extensive experience in analytical instrumentation, ICH stability studies, and laboratory compliance. At the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras, she has played many roles beyond being a PhD student. She has been a program evaluator for the RU Pure Client Program, website content editor for the chemistry department, and a mentor for the American Chemical Society Project Lead program and the RU Pure Client program. She also has helped in the creation of this formal collaboration between the University of Puerto Rico Rio Piedras and the Puerto Rico section of the American Cancer Society. Her research excellence has been recognized through prestigious awards. She was previously an NIH GRISE fellow. Now, currently, she is the recipient of an HHMI Gilliam Fellowship. She has presented at multiple conferences, national and international, received prizes for her accomplishments. So with that introduction, I'll turn over to Karen.
Well, thank you for that introduction. So today I'll be talking about a little bit of the ways and different strategies that I've used to find different types of funding. And this could either be for fellowship focus or either workshop for improving your professional development, and also either supplementary lab funding. So let me, how do I go next slide?
Click on the screen.
On the screen?
It gets stuck, so we just click on the screen to activate it, and then you just move back down.
Okay, so,
Mhm.
okay, thank you. So first of all, who is Carmen Acosta? I know many people here may not know who I am. I know that Tinoco already gave a little introduction about me, but well, I guess he kind of said most of it. But either way, I'll reintroduce this concept. So even if you don't know who I am, how am I even qualified to talk to you guys today? So as Tinoco was mentioning, I have a few years of experience on different things. Obviously, I had previous experience in the industry, and also here you can see a few of the images that I've had with students that I've impacted, people from our lab, which I've helped to possibly find research experiences for the summer experiences, and also we've also been pretty proactive on trying to recruit students to come and join the University of Rio Piedras. And so it's not to brag, but here are a few pictures of me in different events. Even, there's some things that are missing, but you didn't have reached to this far. Here's a few pictures of me presenting in either national and also international conferences. I've also won an award, or we've applied for an award to travel and continue my some research in other universities. And here are also my most recent achievement, which was acquiring the Gilliam Fellowship. So first, I think you should think about is how am I going to start this search to acquire different types of funding? And so I'm going to talk about I'm going to go through these subjects, which is first, use a search engine to help you find about different opportunities. Also use social media to find these opportunities. Also, don't think about just your fellowship. You need to find something to help fund your research. So, and also, like I mentioned previously, your professional development, which is either going to be impacted by your travel funds, workshops, and also supplementary laboratory funding to help you continue your research. And then at the end, I'm going to go a little bit, I'm going to read a few things that I went through when I was applying for the Gillian Fellowship, which is a little bit different from what the focus for how Gustavo presented in the beginning. This is a much more mentor-mentee type of application of a fellowship. So first of all, go online and search for what is available. So there's a lot of search engines. Choose your favorite one. It doesn't matter which one you like. They all probably gonna pop up with the same options. I am a Google person. I go to Google. And the first thing I want to focus everyone with is that you should first look in your for local fellowships. This could be either in your town, institutional fellowships. And obviously, you should also look for broader, more competitive fellowships. But first, as recommended, first look for local fellowships. And the reason why this is because they're less competitive. Not many people know about these local fellowships. So jump on these. And so you'll be surprised for all the amount of opportunities that are around. Want this to be too long, but these are like the most big ones that people, hopefully some of you know. Maybe you don't know none of these, which is good because that's why we're here. So here, for example, Beca Evertech, it's a much more recent fellowship opportunity. They have different branches for the application. There's one specifically for STEM, and the requirements are just to be in good academic standing, be a permanent resident in Puerto Rico, be admitted or enrolled in an accredited university in Puerto Rico, either public or private. And as I said, this is a STEM-focused fellowship, so you should be pursuing a STEM field, either bachelor's, master's, or doctorate. It's open to those ranges. And there is a deadline. This is mostly in the summer. So you have this, the deadline is in July. I don't put the date specifically because they always change, but it's normally focused on July. And the awarded budget is about like $1,000, which is, something is better than nothing. And then the other one that is pretty the one that I know most is the Intellectus. I've actually applied to this previous times and I've won them twice. I recently just had an interview with them recently with their I'll talk about it with a new collaboration that they have. And this is from the Ponce Health Science University. Their objective is to stimulate research in the health and in sciences. This is also either for undergrads. These specifically are for students that want to focus on MD, like degrees for the Ponce Health University, which is focused to that one. So if you are planning to apply, you should recommend that you apply for that because that's for first year incoming students. And so the second one, it's focused for any university, anyone wanting to pursue an MD degree in Puerto Rico. I think this one, they only select one student. So this may be a little bit competitive, but like I mentioned, not many people know about this opportunity. We have the community one. I think this one is to do some type of, if you're pursuing an MD degree, to have an impact in the community. So they award you for an amount of money to help you impact the community. You also have funding for MCAT tests. So they help fund you through the process of the MCAT test. So I know it's pretty expensive and also to acquire materials to study for that. So you have that option. And they also have this one is for like undergraduates in the science camp, and they want undergrads to do summer research. So these fellowships are mostly focused from the time frame from March to April, so they vary from time frame. So you can you can go in there and you can look into the information, and if you find something interesting and more to your focus, you would benefit from that. There is this fellowship. I didn't know about this one. It's by the Cámara de Comercio de Puerto Rico. It's el Fondo de la Cámara de Comercio de Puerto Rico, becas para estudiantes con impedimento de nuevo ingreso universitario. So this basically funds high schoolers that, well, no, enrolled high schoolers that are gonna be pursuing their next term undergraduate studies. So it's, I guess it's focused for functionally diverse students. Um, and they don't say the specific amount of how much they fund, but it's mostly run by donations. And they've collected up to at least $400,000, and they've awarded at least 356 scholarship. And the deadline for this is by May. And then there's also another one from the Fundación Comunitaria Puerto Rico, which is called the Fondo de Becas de José Kiko Custodio. This is for students that are enrolled or about to be enrolled in an engineering or related technical degree within an accredited institution in Puerto Rico. And they are not too strict in the requirements, but one thing that is pretty important here is you should be in a good academic standing to their range. The deadline is in August, and the award budget is about like 2,500. There's another big, this is a big fellowship, which is the Beca de Teodoro Moscoso. This is mostly available for Puerto Ricans with legal residence in Puerto Rico. People are within the ages of 13 and 29. You have to be in good academic standing. If you're in a bachelor's, you have to have a GPA of 375, either bachelor's, master's, or doctoral students. And for more technical vocational degrees, but you should have a 3.5. You should be enrolled in full academic course load, and the award budget varies according to your field. So if you're in a technical or vocational degree, you're only awarded for you're available for funding for 2 years for $10,000 for each year. Well, no, I guess it's for that time, for each year, yeah. And then for a master's, doctorate, and bachelor's degree, you have $40,000 for 4 years. And the deadline for this just passed. It was in November. So now I already talked to you a little bit of the local scholarships that you can apply to, but there's also other opportunities around. And these are one of the most common fundings that you can find when you look in in your search engine. You put, okay, fellowships for graduate degree studies, for undergraduate studies. Well, some of these things are going to pop up. And first, I want to start with the transition students, which are high schoolers going into undergrads. So here are some big scholarships, pretty competitive scholarships, which is like a Coca-Cola Foundation and also the Barry Goldwater. The Barry Goldwater is a really prestigious undergraduate fellowship. But obviously, both of these are mostly high school focused fellowships. They want you to demonstrate leadership. So both of these want the high schoolers to demonstrate some type of leadership role or how they've impacted their local community. For the example, the Coca-Cola Scholarship Foundation. And also, the good thing about the Coca-Cola Foundation, they are pretty generous with their award budget, which is $20,000 for their scholarship. But this one is for high school students or homeschool students, which are going next year to their undergraduate studies. But Barry Goldwater is specifically for undergraduate students in their sophomore or junior years, and which are planning to apply to STEM research careers. So yeah, and for Barry Goldwater, there's also something important which requires it's like a nominated thing. So your university, if they're affiliated, they normally have a representative and they send out nomination. I think they can nominate like until 4 students and 5 if there is one that is a transfer student. So obviously you would have to talk to this representative and get to know a little bit more of how that process is. So the budget for this is like $7,000, 7,500. This is a new one that literally launched 3 days ago. This is by the Puerto Rico Science, Technology, and Research Trust. It's called the Premio ASMAT Azul, which is they collaborated with Puerto Rico Science, Technology, and the Research Trust, and the déjame buscar el nombre. and the Fundación de Asmat Azul, which they're funding currently enrolled 12th grade students in only in public system education systems in Puerto Rico, and they must have been accepted to their university, which must be in a STEM related program in Puerto Rico. And their deadline is next year, then February 14th, 2026. If someone knows anyone, I recommend for you to further, ¿cómo se dice? Pass down this information. And the award budget for this is $20,000, which is pretty good coming from a local funding. And there's another fellowship which is called the Gates Scholarship, and it helps students apply. It's ¿cómo se llama? Let me look for the name. A last dollar type of fellowship, which basically means that they pay the final gap of students, so they owe zero money, zero amount of dollars, which that basically means that they cover all the remaining costs after any specific aid is already applied. So if you have like a Pell Grant or you have a local a university fellowship, they cover what your university does not cover or your Pell Grant doesn't cover, or any other fellowship that you have acquired. And this is specifically for high school seniors. It is Pell eligible, like I mentioned. It's for U.S. citizens or permanent residents. Obviously, you have to be in good academic process. And yeah, they ensure that your full cost, either tuition, housing, books, and meals are met and covered. And I want to bring out a highlight. I had a Project Seed student apply to this, and she has acquired this type of fellowship. And she's now in Caltech, majoring in chemical engineering. So a little bit of a repeat with what Gustavo already mentioned. We have the NSF GFRP application, which is for either bachelor's degree holders or already bachelor or master's degree holders. If you've never enrolled to a graduate degree program and you're in your undergraduate studies, you can apply unlimited times. So you can try since your beginning, and you can just hold it up until you reach your graduate studies. But if you already are a master holding or bachelor's holding a degree student, you have only one time to apply, and it's only limited in your first year application because the rules already changed. It is a pretty generous fellowship. It awards you with $37,000 for annual stipend, and for educational allowance, you have up to $16,000 to cover your tuition and fees. And this support lasts at least for 3 years within a 5-year fellowship window. And the deadlines, I put October, November, because this year it got extended to November, but it's typically for October deadlines. And you must be a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or a permanent resident for this application. Other grant fundings, like Gustavo also talked about a little bit of the F-31, but there's also F-30, which is to help anyone that's interested in dual degree trainings. And this is these both are funded by the NIH. They help cover tuition and fees. They can all vary because this would be in an NIH Institute Center. This is a maximum award for 6 years. Yearly due dates are the NIH has different deadlines for you to submit. It's typically from April, August, and December. So here are the dates. The award budget is NIH set, ¿cómo se dice? Award. So it goes from $28,788 yearly, and it covers up to $21,000 in tuitions. And F-31, it's also a really competitive and prestigious award, which provides full graduate stipend. This is at a pre-doctoral level and helps cover tuition and fees. This award is up to 5 years and also have the same kind of yearly due dates from April 8, August 8, and December 8. And the award budget is the same as this F-30. The good thing about these type of fellowship, they also include institutional allowance, and they also include, help cover childcare if it's provided by a licensed provider. And also, like the other one, Well, in this case, you have to be U.S. citizen, non-citizen national, or a law permanent resident. Okay, these are, I think I repeated this, but it's okay. It's another, ¿cómo se dice? It's another code. If I'm not mistaken, this is the F99, and the other one is a K00. I kind of screwed up the numbering, but these are like for pre-doctoral, and the other one's postdoctoral fellowships. It's a little bit far-fetched from the focus, but it's nice to already know what's available for after you do when you want to do or start your postdoc. And obviously, they also have stipend support at the NIH level. They fund tuitions for tuition fees and training costs. For the F99, they offer 1 to 2 years of pre-doctoral support for your third or fourth year PhD students, and this helps them complete their dissertation studies, or at least the process of the dissertation. And also, they help support transition to talented graduate students into successful postdoctoral appointments. This is only for 2 years funding. Same deadlines as previously mentioned. And the award budget is a little bit lower than the other ones, so 27,000-ish. They do cover tuition, and they also for this award you have a one-time additional allowance for $1,500 to cover travel to a proposed K00 institution where you can meet ¿cómo se dice? A PI that you're interested in continuing your postdoctoral studies. And for K00, you have it's up to 4 years of postdoctoral salary support. It provides covers research development funds. This funding helps you fund supplies, travel, and also training. It's up to 5 years, like I mentioned. Well, no, sorry, it's 5 years. The yearly dues are the same years, and also the award budget is a little high because now you're a postdoc, so it's 60,000. And as the years goes by, and you're within this postdoctoral grant, it can go up until $67,000. And you have $5,000 for research and career development support. And as the other ones, they also include institutional allowance, and they can request $3,000 to cover childcare costs. And for this specifically, there's still not been ¿cómo se dice? Funding the FON, which is a number that they give. I can't open this. So basically, it's a number that they use, so you can go in and see when is the time that it's going to be funded. But the last one, I think they extended it, but until February 2026. But for next fund, for the next cycle, there hasn't been any number published. So that we have to be on the lookout. You would have to continuously go in and see if it's been updated. For this one, it's also like pretty prestigious. It's pretty competitive. But the good thing about this one, you can there's a lot of focus on different ¿cómo se dice? Study backgrounds. So if you're a STEM student, if you're a language student, a cultural student, you can go in here and look for what your degree, what is compatible with your degree. I'm sorry. So they have a STEM one that is focused. The applicants for the study research awards are designed is to design their own projects and typically work with advisors in other foreign countries or universities of higher education. These universities have to be affiliated with the Fulbright program. There's up to 140 countries that have this available. The monthly stipend depending where you're going at, and it's funded up to a period for 8 months and 12 months. So that kind of varies. They also offer travel support and additional travel alliances, depending if you have a research-related trip. So they are also available to fund that. And like I mentioned, the award budget, it varies. There's also the Hertz Foundation, which it's a fellowship, but the full fellowship is valued up until $500,000, which is pretty good. It must be for college seniors or college seniors, first year graduate students, or in a gap year preparing to apply for graduate school. It's basically focused for physical and biological sciences, also math backgrounds and engineering. They cover full tuition. It's renewable up to 5 years, and they have $5,000 year stipend for fellows with dependent children. A lot of these fellowships have like something like this in the background, so you should always ask about this information. The award budget is estimated for $38,000 for a 9-month stipend, so you get paid during the year cycle, ¿cómo se dice? The study cycle, summers, but not pretty much there. But to reiterate, you must be a college senior, first year graduate student, or in that gap year. And they also have a thing that if you already have another fellowship, they try to match and try to have the student benefit from all of the other fellowships that they have. Oh, this one is one that just, I think their deadline is today, or it was yesterday. I'm not too sure. It's today? Yeah, today. So it's the SMART program, which is funded by the Department of Defense. That provides merit-based scholarship for bachelor's, master's, and doctoral students pursuing the STEM degrees. It's also like recently they also started expanding it to incoming college freshmen with no prior credit, and also to these high school seniors. And they offer full tuition. The annual stipend can range from 30,000 to 46,000. As I mentioned, if you're starting with already carrying a master's degree, it could change. Book health and allowance, summer. They also have you have to do a summer internship, so they have it structured already in this fellowship. They obviously you have experience mentors to help you with this, and after this they will help you stay within that DoD system, so they will help you get employed. You can go in this and search a little bit more on the context of it. This is just superficial. It's available for 1 to 5 years. You can like solicit it for your last year because you just need it. It's available that way, and also any that is a U.S. New Zealand or United Kingdom are eligible to apply. The one that I know recently is the Gillian Fellows Program, as I've been recently funded with this one. It provides full support for the students for up to 3 years in their thesis research, typically in their 3rd to 5th years of PhD studies. It is a joint application, like I mentioned before, between the student and the mentor. Their award budget is $53,000 in total, which is broken down into $4,000 for discretionary allowances, $10,000 for tuition and fees, $3,000 for community engagement allowance, and $36,000 for fellow stipend. This year there was not a cycle running, so they are doing some restructuring. We have a meeting next week. They're gonna talk about this. I don't know if they're gonna release that information in the websites, but you should look into that for next week and see if they update the information. But that is the problem. That's happening. And like I said, this is what it's locally in the web page. Some things have changed already, but I don't want to say things that could be a little bit different for the next term. So I'm just sticking with what's already known. So yeah, like I said, this information can change up for the next cohort application. And something I forgot to mention in the first half of this, like I mentioned, you have to look for local funds. So something that you should first look into is if the university you're going to apply to already has funds. So the University of Puerto Rico already has funding available for graduate students. I've heard that they used to have for undergraduates, but now we have more focus on graduate students. And we have different opportunities, and this is offered by the DEGI, the Departamento de estudio graduado e investigativo. We have scholarship for support of the graduate student research and professional development, um, ¿cómo se dice? Fellowship. We have formative academic experiences. We have academic and merit exceptional performance fellowships, dissertation thesis or equivalent project fellowship. They help you try to finish your degree. And there's other financial aids that also undergrads can apply to and graduate students, which is either, como se dice, work study programs, other type of grants, and they help you, apply to these. What we want to avoid is the application to those federal funds that I think they have here on the bottom side. Something that you can also, here's where my tips come in. I don't know if many people do this, but one of the things I do is I don't rely necessarily on these search engine searches, but I go into other universities because other universities, they list other options that because different universities focus on different studies, Some are more engineered based, some are more STEM, biology focused. So they already know what's out there. And, you just go in there. For example, I went into and I wrote Princeton fellowships on my search engine. And what popped up was this. I got a fellowships webpage, and I saw that they have two options. You have either your local fellowships. For example, you have here the Princeton fellowships, which are available for Princeton. And then you have your external fellowships, which this is what I want to check because I'm not a Princeton fellow. So I click on the Princeton external fellowships, and I saw that they have these divisions. I went obviously inside the natural sciences and engineering tab. And if you see here, they mentioned the Hertz one that I already talked about. I already knew about that one. They already talked about the individual research fellowships that I previously mentioned early on in this talk. But they also list these other 5 fellowships that I didn't even know about. And that's nice to know. Maybe one of them don't apply to me, but, that's why I go in there and I keep searching, And that's how I expand and know about these other competitions. Something else you should look into is using social media to find different opportunities, specifically on LinkedIn. I found a bunch of these fellowships, like an Instagram fellowship, in Facebook, TikTok, not too much, but there's like videos where they compile information, and you mostly find opportunities more for like language, ¿cómo se dice? Language fellowships for you to go to another country and learn the other language. But LinkedIn is your friend if you're a STEM major. This is an example of me scrolling through LinkedIn. This was literally less than 30 seconds, and I screenshotted everything I found in 30 seconds, and probably there was more, but I didn't want to overwhelm the screen. Look, I already found there's an Emerging Talent Award hosted by Lilly, sponsored with collaboration with the ACS. There's an ACS Summer School on Green and Sustainable Chemistry. They'll help you become greener and pursue more green chemistry. There is a Next Gen Leaders in Chemistry Award from Merck. There's also travel grants for this conference and this international fellowships for 2026. It was something else. I didn't screenshot the other one, but they listed a bunch of fellowships available for next year. So as you see, that's a really good resource. So I recommend you update your LinkedIn profile. You go into it regularly as the same regularity that you go in your Instagram page, like I do. Sometimes I get bored and I just scroll around, and that's what helps me find these different opportunities. So, and if you see here too, follow people. If you see people posting stuff and they're kind of relevant to your field or your interests, you should, consider connecting. You have to get connected to a lot of people. That way you network and you understand and you know about these other opportunities. So now seeing this, maybe I should follow this guy. He seems to be, ¿cómo se dice? Uploading a lot of things that may be relevant or interesting for me. Something else that I wanted to talk about here in this seminar is that there's other opportunities that can help you for your professional development. So you should apply, and I encourage you to apply supplementary funding. So yeah, your professor is, bringing the big bucks to your project and, to your, to your lab, but it's nice to have that same feeling and, kind of helping them too to bring in funds to your lab. So, and also your professor wants you to go and have these other opportunities and network with other people. And the way that you can do that, if you don't have the economics behind you, you can apply to either travel funds, your workshops, and also supplementary laboratory information funding, which, I've had the opportunity to apply to most of all of these. And also there are core centers locally and externally that offer these opportunities, like national labs. And in our case, we have it inbred. Let alone, there's also societies that they have opportunities for you to apply to um, all of these events. And you can also become affiliates and members. And on top of that, they also send you more resources for you to apply to these. And something like I was mentioning, we have the Technology Transfer Travel Award program, which provides full travel support for a student and the faculty of an undergraduate institution to receive training in mainland institutions. This is in the case that you are lacking some equipment. You can apply for this and hopefully, finish off some work that you need to be done. So priority will be given to faculty and student of non-PhD granting institutions, but it obviously does not limit you to apply to these because, like I mentioned, not many people know about this. The award will provide for the cost of the faculty applicant plus one student. They covers per diem, cost, housing allowance, and as well as funds for Becedamita, but for your research. And the deadline, there's no deadline. You can apply whenever you want to, as long as they have the funds available. And the award budget is up to $8,000. Could even go a little bit higher depending on how much they have available. There is also the ACS Bridge Travel and Professional Development Award that many people in our department have applied to. And this award covers up to $1,000 in expenses if selected. And this is an opportunity for everyone, not necessarily graduates, but also undergraduate students can apply to this, regardless if they are ACS members or if they've applied for a conference or anything. Just go to have that experience of being in a national or local conference. And so the deadline is this is upcoming deadline. This one I put the upcoming deadline. It's on January 19th, 2026. So you still have time. You have for next month, for the next month. And like I mentioned, it's $1,000 in the expenses, which is pretty nice, better than nothing. There's also opportunities for these workshops. Here's an example of ACS Bridge Career Kickstarter workshop, which I participated in my second year when I started. It's a workshop for graduate students and also postdoctoral scholars that are in the transition in looking for professional workforce. I went a little bit early on, but I kind of know what I wanted to do. So I, went in here and try to, learn a little bit more of maybe something I didn't know. And it helps you, they help you with your professional development and the way that they help you conduct better job searches, help you know how to apply, what strategies you should take when you're looking for your career. They also help you outline the goals that you want to reach before acquiring or reaching that desired career, and also help you identify personal values and skills, because if you know what you value more and what skills you have, you know where to put them at. There's also other workshops. There's this SMDP, which they have a biotech and a medtech workshops where they pay, it's like a mentor pair. They pair you with a mentor in each of these fields for a year, but they do have like a small workshop and where they talk about, that transitioning from grad school into these type of career fields. And there's also this, like I mentioned earlier, like I recently saw in my LinkedIn page, they have a Merck Next Gen Leaders in Chemistry, which they also fly you out and learn a little bit more on how you can impact and how you become that type of leader in your field. Again, I bring the Intellectus Foundation. They do have laboratory funds, supplementary applications. So this is also something I encourage people to do. Bring in money to your lab. Maybe you have funds allocated for specific things, but you want to fund something new, which you didn't know you needed at the beginning, but then your project brought up something new, a new question, and you want to understand why is that now happening. So you apply, this is specifically for research in health focus funding. There's also one in sexual violence. Um, they recently have a new collaboration with the Alivia Specialty Pharmacy, and they have a total amount of $85,000, which they will distribute depending on the application of applied for that term. So if you request it for 8,000, maybe they'll try to lower and match to so they can have more applicants for that cycle. But I encourage you to apply. You put a specific amount that you think you can cover your research with, and you can apply. They also have other um, um, applications like for research. This is the research in science. This is for health. They have investigations for this. I think this for students to participate in research during their career in medicine. So if you're MD based, you can apply for this one, and Beca de Publicaciones, which they help you like the other one, like a travel fund. So I also included it here because I'm already highlighting a lot of Intellectus. So yeah, I've been to a lot of things. I've been applied to a lot of fellowships, and with the support of my mentor, we've done a bunch of things. But something I've been doing when I've gone to these international conferences is that something that I know, one thing that I am for sure is that everyone has an acknowledgement section. And normally in your acknowledgement sections, you put everyone that's helped you with your funding, and also they put that information that is linked to your funding. And so something I want to highlight is I've been on the look for these sections, in which they mostly show either the numbering or the name, the acronym, or they just show the images for this. So I normally look into what people put in there. I write it down, and then when I go home, or if I'm bored someday, I'm not that busy, I go in my search engine and I put that information there, and I try to look, am I eligible for that? Because sometimes the research they may have collaboration with something else, and it's not kind of focus it's not related to my field, but that helps me a lot to expand and possibly be more competitive into applying to this, because also some of these big people rely on these smaller funding. And if I have the advantage and already saw that they ¿cómo se dice?